Imagine the family you are working with right now is a band, with each family member playing their own instrument. How's that band sounding right now? Are they likely to make it onto America's Got Talent? Or do they need a new manager or a new producer? Are they playing in harmony? Is everyone listening to the beat? It's a good question to ask yourself. My name's Oliver, and I'm a clinical director, a clinical supervisor, and a family systems therapist. And I love helping parents and teens grow great relationships. And I also love sharing what I know with other therapists. So in this video, I'm going to talk about an easy to implement structural family systems intervention that you can use like literally today. It ties in a lot of the elements of this theory and will hopefully help the family make some beautiful music together. The intervention is what I call the house meeting. And just to really draw out this musical metaphor, imagine a band that hasn't practiced before doing a gig. It's just not going to function as well as it would had they been rehearsing every day before the show. Rehearsals require everyone to come together, and that's kind of the principle behind the house meeting. So I'm going to break down what it does from a structural family systems perspective so that you get to know exactly what you're asking the family to do and why, and what elements of it you need to emphasize and why, because you'll have to modify this a little bit depending on your family. If you've not seen any of my other videos, a quick reminder of some of the general goals of structural family systems. They are to increase flexible transactions, communicate better, modify the role of the IP. We don't want there to be an IP, and to clarify boundaries. No porous boundaries, no rigid boundaries. So I'm going to do my best to try and refer to these as I explain the house meeting so you can see how it ties in with the overall goals of treatment from a systems perspective. The family meeting is based on a practice that I came across when I was running a residential treatment center called clinical availability. So whenever people come and stay in rehabs or mental health facilities, they need to know that they're being heard and seen by the clinical team and the clinical director. So it was important I was there too. One of the ways that I made this happen was by creating a weekly house meeting. And I got as many members of my team together as I could, all of the clients together on a Friday afternoon, and we would discuss the plans for the week ahead. So this was a dedicated time that fostered open communication. The clients could ask questions, make suggestions, make a lot of complaints. So we built some trust, we got feedback, and we gave the clients a chance to be seen and heard. So I've translated this idea that I was using in residential treatment to families that I work with in my private practice. It's a structured, formatted meeting that helps families engage with each other, address concerns, celebrate progress, provide a sort of safe space for everyone to express themselves. If parents do this, the message that they're sending their children with a weekly house meeting is, your voice matters, your wishes are important for me to hear, but not necessarily to act on. And I want us to get together, I want us to be a family. Structural family systems is really big on organization. In an ideal family, we want parents in a separate zone from their kids. So the theory says that symptoms occur in a family when this is not the case. Most of the families I work with look more like that. Kids have entered the parent zone because of those porous boundaries, and they've got too much power. Now, there's nothing wrong with kids having power and a voice, obviously, but it has to be age appropriate, it has to be earned, and it probably has to be managed. One family that I worked with recently had a family map a bit like this. The parents were just frazzled. 2 teenagers were running the show, wearing them down, asking them for things nonstop, refusing to go to school. I gave them the house meeting because it can set a tone of parents being back in control. And it's the start of reorganizing the family structure. If you've ever worked in a corporate job, most often it's a team leader or the boss that calls the meeting. So the very act of saying, hey, we are going to meet every Sunday for 20 minutes in a house meeting is a way of reinforcing the idea that parents are the boss. Communication, well, house meeting is literally all about communication, right? To start the meeting, I suggest everyone answer these 3 questions, just as like an icebreaker and to get the ball rolling. What worked this week? What didn't work this week? And what do you want even more of this week? So this is a form of feedback. It's encouraging kids to share honestly and respectfully and to ask for what they need and to tolerate hearing feedback about themselves. If boundaries are too rigid in the family, it's a way of loosening them up. You're literally asking parents to be available to hear their children's needs, wants, and desires. If boundaries are too porous, the way the house meeting is organized adds structure and reduces all of the chaos that comes with porous boundaries. There's also obviously a very practical component to having a meeting like this. In any corporate job I've had, my day gets filled with meetings. And these, I suppose, in theory, are useful to, these are important and useful to organize, delegate, share information. I'm sure you know the sort of meetings I'm talking about. So the family house meeting is just the same as a team meeting, which you would do at work, but for a family, which I imagine is more important than doing it for work, but we never seem to do it. So on a practical level, you can think about the week ahead. What do people need? Who's driving who where? It's a way to organize. The families I work with, I'm looking to see how chaotic they feel or how organized they feel. And most chaotic families are just not doing this. They're constantly being reactive rather than responsive. And the idea is that this gives the parents time and space to collect their thoughts and center a little bit, and hopefully rein in some of that chaos. So the weekly meeting gives parents a space in the week where kids can come and ask them for the things they need, which is so much better than those very spontaneous moments when teenagers seem to come up, seem to remember things that they need urgently right before they're due, like help with the homework or a new pair of shoes. So we're reducing the chaos of the week and making it focused in one specific slot on a Sunday or whenever it is. In effect, we're helping the teenagers become more organized. They have to hold on to their thoughts, remember things for the house meeting. Obviously, that won't work every single time, but most things can wait until the house meeting to be asked. That's encouraging responsibility and accountability and taking the pressure off parents. There's a lot of overlap here with boundaries, because when you have a time scheduled in your week that is specifically for asking things like new shoes or help with your homework, it gives parents full permission to say, great, will you remind me in the house meeting, please? Boundary. I think that is a great life lesson for teen and tweens. You're saying, yes, I want to hear what you say and what you need, but you also have a responsibility to hold onto it until the appropriate moment. I think that's all about executive functioning. It sets boundaries and says, no, you can't ask me for things whenever you think of them. You have to be mature and responsible here. So we're encouraging accountability and responsibility, setting these boundaries, and helping children discern when is appropriate and when isn't. It's a teaching moment. When parents remind their kids to ask for things in the house meeting, it sets a boundary that stops kids from doing that age-old tactic of divide and conquer. If both parents are insisting that their children ask about staying out late or going to a party in the house meeting, there's less of a chance that teen can get one parent to say yes, because in the house meeting, both parents are going to be together. So we're holding this boundary. We're asking parents to hold the boundary that says you have to ask us both together. You can't divide and conquer us. You can't split us off. You have to ask us when we're both together. Before I go on, let me know if this is useful by leaving me a comment below. Please hit subscribe as well. And if you want more interventions or ideas like this, I'd love to hear from you, and I will keep the videos coming. So the next structural principle is about hierarchy. So house meeting isn't a one-way street. It's also an opportunity for caregivers and parents to remind their kids of rules, expectations, and consequences, reminding them who's in charge. Now, again, I suggest the parents start with listening to their kids' needs and wants, but after the parents have listened, it's only fair that the kids have to listen to their parents. So there's a section in the house meeting for parents to remind teens of rules, like, no, you can't draw on the walls and lights are turned off at 10 p.m. If you want to borrow something, you have to ask first. So parents are establishing themselves at the top of the hierarchy when they do this. And they do it together in a house meeting. They're reinforcing rules, consequences, which can really help toughen up porous boundaries and put parents back in charge. Remember that kids are breaking rules or acting out because they have too much power, because they don't have limits, and because they don't have consequences, which they probably really need. So this is a really excellent way to help parents modify the role of the IP if the IP is too big or too powerful. The family that I'm thinking of and I worked with before their first house meeting, I got the parents to get really clear on 2 or 3 rules that they were implementing about chores and homework and cell phones or something like that. So if you're going to use this in your practice, don't drop it on the parents. Take the time to go through what parents need to get clear on. Have the parents decide the rules and the consequences together and have them set it in the house meeting. Now, you can weigh in on what's appropriate and what isn't, but we want the parents to be doing the majority of the heavy lifting. We want them to work together. We want them to work together on the rules and the boundaries and the consequences, because that will stop them being split up and the divide and conquer thing happening. And we want both parents to be equally in charge. There's a developmental part of this as well. And the house meeting is a way that we can get teens and tweens to advocate for what they need and want in a super appropriate and helpful way. So we're going to ask kids and teens to bring proposals to the house meeting for parents to consider, which is wildly different from demanding things that they're either due or dropping requests on parents as they're getting out of the car. So let me explain that a little bit. In residential treatment, the teens I was looking after would suggest activities for the week, themes that they wanted to explore in group, or art projects they wanted to do. So as well as being helpful and keeping them entertained, the meta lesson here was we were giving them a sense of agency and control. Rather than being grumpy because we ran out of peanut butter, we were making them use their words and ask for what they needed. Because ultimately you're going to have to ask for a pay rise. You're going to have to ask to take time off when you have a job. So this is a really important life skill. Now, just because they asked for things didn't mean that they would get them. So if they wanted to go swimming with sharks or bungee jumping, I would consider it and maybe do some research before telling them that actually insurance won't cover that. So they won't be going swimming with sharks or bungee jumping. And you can remind parents of this too, right? You listen to your kids. You don't have to decide then and there. You're just listening and you can get back to them. Encouraging kids to bring their ideas to the house meeting and present them to parents has to be accompanied with good reasoning. So if they want to stay out later than normal, they would have to explain why. So maybe it's someone's birthday, or maybe it's because there's a special event or they feel they deserve it. I'm constantly blown away by how mature and sophisticated teenagers can be when they've done this for me in my sessions. I think they understand that if they will be heard, they get to be very eloquent and opinionated. And I think that's because they just know that they'll be listened to. So I think this encourages teenagers to advocate for themselves, which is that important life lessons. And in structural terms, we're talking about age-appropriate power. You know, teenagers are not demanding to stay out late. They're asking nicely and presenting reasons why they think they should. Parents get to consider things together and respond when they're ready, not necessarily in the moment. So one of the goals of family systems is to modify the role of the IP. We don't want there to be an IP. And often parents are overly focused on the IP's behaviors. They're acting out their anxiety, their self-harm. House meeting can be used to force parents to name something other than the problem. Hopefully something good. So you could allow each family member the opportunity to express themselves and answer the question, what's one thing you're proud of doing this week? And let everybody share. Or you could use this as an opportunity to go around and share gratitude for one thing each family member did that you noticed and enjoyed and delighted in. I think in narrative therapy, that's called a sparkling moment. And you find the thing in your week that stands out and you celebrate it with your family. So this is asking parents to make a shift in the way that they see their child who's the IP. This is really asking parents to make a shift in the way that they see their kids, and in particular, the IP, who is often only really seen in terms of the issues. So it's causing a reframe. I think it's an intervention called Catch Your Child Being Good. Okay, so there you have it. That was House Meeting. I hope you can see how it will help with the goals of treatment, how it's really kind of oriented towards strategic, how it's really oriented towards structural therapy. We can help clarify boundaries, modify the role of the IP, and increase more flexible transactions and communication. Again, hit follow and subscribe if you want more family system stuff. I would love to keep these videos coming. And if you have questions, let me know. Maybe I'll make a video for you.